In 1897, H.G. Wells penned a science fiction novella entitled The Invisible Man. In short, it's the story of a scientist who invents a way to change a body's refractive index to that of air, so that neither it absorbs light or reflects light, and thus he becomes invisible. He successfully carries out all of his procedures except for one. He can't figure out how to reverse the process. So he remained invisible. This newfound invisibility works him over in a not so kind manner. Midway through his encounter with his own invisibility, he commented, "I love light." Perhaps you'll think it strange that an invisible man should need light, desire light, love light. But maybe it is exactly because I am invisible that I love light, as light conforms my reality. It gives birth to my form. We are provided the time and even the luxury of creating our professional selves. So, borrowing from the invisible man, might we be able to take on the idea that light shines on us and thus makes our actions transparent? That is, when light shines on what we do and who we are, we become visible. I want to encourage you to become ever more transparent. Allow me a moment to provide a morning prayer for this time. Lord of light and hope, of depth and delight, of wonder and wandering, shine your radiant light on us, and in so doing, reveal our best transparent selves. Create in us a self who has nothing to hide, nothing to shield, nothing to disguise. Bless us now. Bless our food, our time, and the treasure of one another's company. Amen. Please join me in welcoming our president, Chris Kimball.
Good morning. Good morning. That was really weak. Thank you, Pastor Scott. He talked about H.G. Wells. I'm afraid I was going to start with the L.A. Rams. Our neighbors, our tenants up the street are a little bit away from the NFL draft, where they pick players, football players out of college, and start them on the road to being professional football players in the NFL. And at one level, being professional means they're getting paid for it in a way they didn't in college, unless they went to certain schools I won't mention that are on probation now. But what the Rams will tell you is that being a professional football player is a lot more than just the fact you're getting paid. In talking to their football operations director, who spent a lot of time in college football before transitioning to the NFL, he said there are a few who make bad decisions. They get all the headlines, all the stories, but he said the great majority realize that playing football in the NFL is their career, their profession, one that because of the aging process won't last forever, and they need to do the best they can. And they approach it with intense seriousness in how they prepare, how they train, how they eat, how they conduct themselves, how they appear in public, how they interact with others. It's all kinds of things that happen off the field that determine whether they're going to be successful professionals or not just the fact that they get paychecks. And so this morning, I think it's terrific that all of you are here recognizing that becoming a professional is an important step. It's not something you just walk into when you graduate and take a job. that there's a lot more to it. As the title of this program suggests, there are many paths, just like there are many professions. And it is a transition as you move into the line of work that you pursue. How you approach it, how you present yourself, how you prepare, determines how much you will succeed. So in addition to thanking you for being here and being forward-thinking enough to recognize the need to follow the paths to professionalism, I want to thank our panelists for being here this morning to lead you in thinking about those things from each of their perspectives. And I also want to thank the School of Management for putting on an event like this. School of Management is terrific at connecting what goes on in the classroom with what goes on out in the world and connecting class to career. That's a hallmark of Lutheran colleges, and particularly here in the School of Management. And I think that is a testament to the faculty and staff in the school and their leader, the current dean, Gerhard Apfelthaler. And I would like to introduce him to say a few words. Gerhard?
I'm not sure what the emphasis on current dean means. We also have the past dean here. Thank you, Chris, for pointing this out. So let me welcome you all. I'm afraid it's going to deteriorate very quickly from my prior speakers, from Pastor Scott, who is cited an author, and to President Chris Kimball, who continued with the LA Rams. I'm going to take it down to the level of McDonald's. So there is a famous case study, and don't worry, I'm not going to turn it into a class. There's a famous case study of McDonald's entering what we would call an emerging market today. I'm not going to say which country it was in order not to offend anybody. So that McDonald's entered that market with their first flagship store in the center of the largest city in that country. And they got a huge amount of applications, tens of thousands of applications, and they had no way of processing all these applications. So what did McDonald's do? McDonald's produced a video and invited all those tens of thousands of applicants to a soccer stadium. And they showed the video there, and the video featured the day in the life of a typical McDonald's employee. So the video started out with the typical McDonald's employee gets up in the morning and takes a shower. About 10,000 people got up and left the stadium. Then it continued saying that the typical McDonald's employee shows up on time at his workplace. Another 10,000 people got up and left. And then it continued from there on, and it talked about professionalism in the workplace. This is not to make fun of anybody. This is just to show you what employers really value. There is tons of studies out there, employer surveys about what do they value in particularly business school graduates. And the not so surprising thing is that it is actually mostly in the area of professionalism and soft skills. So it's the ability to interact with others with respect, but also in a goal-driven manner. It's the ability to make yourself a valuable team member while succeeding as an individual. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So the bad news is it's all about professionalism. It never stops. The good news for you is you are graduating, those of you who are graduating this year, in an environment, in an economic environment that's very favorable. So even if you lack some of those skills, you'll probably have a hard time not to find a job in this current economic climate. But still, this should not undervalue the importance of an event like this. And would like to thank our panelists again. I'd like to thank the faculty members who have put on this event and the staff members who have supported it. We have Vicky Emilia in the back and Susan Wood. Faculty members, we have Patrick Manning in the audience, and of course, my predecessor, the previous Dean of the School of Management, Charles Maxey, in the room. I hope I did not overlook anybody in the room. No faculty member except for Veronica Guererro, faculty member in the School of Management who has thankfully put on this event. Thank you, Veronica.
Good morning. I just kind of want to give you an overview of what the next hour is going to take place. I'm going to quickly introduce our panelists. which I am very honored that they are here today, and then they are going to take over. I'm going to ask them to start with a short introduction to some questions I've asked them, and then we're going to take questions from the floor, and we have two individuals that will be going around, Susan and Kim, with microphones. So you just raise your hand, they'll come over with the microphone, and you can ask your questions. So we encourage lots of questions this morning because this event, again, is for you. So first, I'd like to introduce Cynthia Kiefer, president and founder of zmatches.com. Cynthia has an extensive background in commercial and residential real estate with 15 plus years of corporate real estate and banking experience. She's worked as a national marketing director and senior officer in commercial real estate asset management and banking, as well as within the national and regional production, acquisition, and disposition. Her most recent passionate endeavor is her invention of zmatches.com, an industry software revolutionizing the online real estate experience. Cynthia is a UCLA graduate with a master's candidate at Pepperdine University in Malibu. So welcome, Cynthia. Next, I'd like to introduce Jim Howard, managing partner and founder at Progressive REI. Jim's the founder of Progression REI. He supervises corporate strategy, directs the firm's strategic vision, and oversees daily operations of asset management, investor relations, and accounting. The core business is the acquisition and asset management of high-yielding and opportunistic retail properties throughout the Western U.S. He's an experienced professional with investment and joint venture expertise gained through over $4 billion of completed transactions. From 2007 to 2013, he was a principal senior advisor and senior vice president of Bental Kennedy, a real estate investment advisor with over $25 billion in property. He holds a master's of real estate development at the Price School of Public Policy and a BS in business administration from the Marshall School of Business at USC. Welcome, Jim. And Primo Custodio, who you've probably seen on campus, is a retired vice president of human resources and operations and technical services at NBCUniversal. He's now an executive in residence here at the School of Management at Lutheran. He retired in 2016 after a career spanning 44 years. He held the position of Vice President of Human Resources at NBCUniversal since September 2001. He was responsible for overseeing the human resources function on the West Coast for the operations and technical services consisting of Universal Studio operations, including production and post-production, and the West Coast technical operations consisting of engineering, technology, and Universal Technical Operations. He started his career with NBCUniversal in 1972 with the Yosemite Park and Curry Company at Yosemite National Park. He holds his MBA in Management and Organizational Behavior and a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Management from Lutheran University. So welcome, Primo. So with that, what I've asked them to do is just to take a few minutes each to share with you their top career highlight and their toughest interview experience. So, Jim, if you don't mind starting us off, that would be great.
My top career highlight was what somebody described as jumping out of an airplane and building a parachute on the way down. After about 30 years in institutional real estate, working predominantly for pension fund advisors, so SEC registered firms that represent pension plans, international investors, university endowments and the like. And we typically would do investments in the, say, 40 to 200 million dollar size range, building apartments, buying office buildings, buying shopping centers and the like. My leap from the airplane was to leave the institutional world and form my own firm, which I did in September of 2013. And we're now at the point where we're in contract to buy our 8th shopping center. What all the shopping centers have in common is that they're in solid metropolitan statistical areas with good growth dynamics within really good local trade areas, because shoppers only will go anywhere from 1 to 5 miles depending on the type of retailer it is. and be at a great intersection with well-configured centers so that we can get national credit tenants. And the basic plan for that is that since I no longer had an income, and I have 2 kids in private school and a wife and a house and desire to travel, that I needed to have a return on my investable capital. So the strategy was to produce at least an 8 return on equity from the outset that we could grow to an 11 by year 3, and each property's done better than that.
Good morning. I like that pause. Thank you for having me. I'm just honored to be able to mentor and to give back to you guys today. I remember these days of being a graduate. I was one of 2 selected from UCLA, recruited by a commercial real estate firm back in that time, where it wasn't really typical for commercial real estate firms in that day to recruit women. It was very male-dominated. So I was very honored to be selected as one of those recruits and go on from there on an upward trajectory in my career to really work hard and really make a name for myself. One of my career highlights was being picked by Washington, D.C. to be on a team to help take down failed thrifts throughout the country. We would, on our team, analyze these thrifts and failed institutions, some of the largest in the country, to reassess the assets, reposition all the commercial real estate and residential real estate, and make the recommendations to Washington on best ways to liquidate these banks and dismantle the assets. It was notable in a couple regards. Not only was I on a very prominent team reporting to DC and working with FBI, et cetera, but I was also working on cutting-edge history and was really hands-on with some of the things that we now know as our recent past. I've also been able to develop and cultivate some of my own firms along the way, so that's also been very exciting. And leveraging a lot of my experience over the years and putting that to use to develop and create my own full-service real estate firms. I've most recently invented and cultivated some industry dynamics to make real estate tech a little bit more inventive and a little bit more three-dimensional. So again, I'm honored to be among you, and thank you for having me.
I think I'm live here. There we go. Good morning, and I'd also like to say thank you very much for having me here today. It's always a pleasure to be here and to share and to mentor my experience with all of you that are getting ready to go out into the workplace. Probably my most, the greatest highlight of my career is transitioning through 6 mergers and acquisitions with what is now NBCUniversal Comcast. It was a very long journey, starting in 1988 until 2011 when Comcast purchased NBCUniversal. It was great because I had the opportunity to watch different companies come in, such as General Electric, Seagram, Matsushita from Japan, and learn their culture and their organization. But I suddenly found that I had a very important role as an HR executive, and that was to get the managers and the workforce through those very difficult transitions, particularly when you had a company like General Electric coming in with a huge cultural footprint, a very massive cultural footprint. And their industrial manufacturing and NBC or Universal Studios at that time, were a film industry. So the challenge there is to meet all the strategic goals, but at the same time, help the managers, help the employees transition culturally, process and procedures into what is the new organization that bubbles up. So for me, getting through those 6 mergers and acquisitions was a tremendous highlight, and I absolutely had to learn to be a change agent day one. So that's a little bit about my career highlight.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions from the floor? I know it's early,
It's still early.
but it's not that early. I'll start us off with one. Can you tell me what's the top interview question you would ask an entry-level applicant? Primo, do you mind starting us
No, I
off from there?
don't. One of the questions that I like to ask an applicant is, Why should I hire you? Tell me how you differentiate yourself from the other applicants in the marketplace. And those two, I ask, why should I hire you, to get a sense of the person's confidence in the interview. Do they believe in who they are, what they represent, what they're going to do in life? Do they have a sense of themselves? It's always an important question. And then the differentiation question, the second part of that really is, you know, do you understand your unique skills and ability? Because each and every one of you in this room has them. But it's a process to identify them and then leverage them in that interview process.
I interviewed quite a few candidates along the way with my different firms, and it's very important as you progress in your careers to be clear on your vision. So my top question for any of my candidates is, what's your vision in the next 2 to 3 years? Because if you can't see it, you can't have it. So in that one question, I can immediately discern their intent, their ambition, their confidence, and if they're really clear on their objective. And in that one sentence, I can pretty much tune out from the rest of the interview process, because I know whether or not from that sentence if this is a candidate for my firm. So be very clear on your intention, be very clear on your vision, so you can make strides to get there. And that's a little food for thought, because that seemed to, over the years, with people that have employed myself and people that I've interviewed for my firms, been a very good indicator of in or out.
Well, one of the things that I would normally try and do is find out from somebody, so who have you helped? Because in organizations, there's people who are really givers that do a little extra, and those are the people that you want to surround yourself with. In the audience, you'll know who you are if you had term papers or group projects where maybe there are 3 people working on it and somehow you always do half the work. Keep it up. That's who you want to be. Because one thing to think about is we all know what the exponential curves look like. You know, 1 becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 8, becomes 16, 32. It accelerates. And so if you can get a little bit ahead by being the person who just does a little bit more, and if you're helping others to build the organization, it all comes back around, and those are the people you want to surround yourself with.
Thank you. Do we have anyone with a question?
I have one for Primo. Primo, what was the best answer that you can remember you got from an applicant on your question about differentiation? The one that stands out.
Actually, it was in a technical position, and this individual had recently graduated, and they had also been involved in a lot of extracurricular activities, if you will, in the broadcast industry. And she was very matter of fact with me, I remember, and just simply looked at me and said, I'm a recent college graduate, top in my class. I've gone above and beyond the educational arena by getting practical experience out in the field. I've done some volunteer work. Everything she said to me said, here is someone who doesn't stop at school while they're in school, but goes beyond and joins professional affiliations, gets their name out there, has a really strong network in the particular industry they want. So for me, and we had many applicants that month we were interviewing, she just stood out. She took the extra step. And I think you know that as an interviewer when someone comes in. So that's kind of the long answer.
What are some of the sacrifices that you've had to make in order to have the career of your choice?
I'll start that. Being a woman in corporate America, sometimes, guys, the success is not just always the material part of it or climbing the ladder to a corporate title. It's striking a balance in your life. So you want to make sure that you really prioritize balance. So family is very important for me in my balancing act. So that was part of my success quotient. So it equates differently for different people, but as you're coming into your climb, you want to make sure that you take care of yourself and do things that are for you, and also work really hard and be successful. But the sacrifices along the way is it's very difficult to multitask as a woman, as a mom, as a wife, as a homemaker, but you learn quickly how to put that in your arsenal of what your career accomplishments are, because it's very necessary in order to strike balance.
It's funny, I was going to use the same term, balance, because you will make sacrifices, just like in college where you have an occasional all-nighter. Same thing happens in business. Sometimes there's a deadline, there's a project, it's just going to take effort, and you do what you do. I like to travel, and yet we went almost 3 years without a vacation other than 6 days in Hawaii with starting my own firm. And so my family's going, what happened, Dad? Things were good before. But a balance, exercise, because if you're not healthy, you're not going to be good at your job eventually. Stay close to your very closest family members and friends, because if you're not well-grounded, that's not going to be good for your job. So it's all things, but balance is a good phrase to work from.
Yeah, I agree with my fellow panelists. The success quotient and having the balance is very important. And I'll take off on what Jim said. Taking care of yourself is really important, physically, emotionally, psychologically. You're no good to anyone else, family members, friends, anyone, if you haven't taken care of yourself first. And part of taking care of yourself means that you understand where you have to give attention in your life. Sacrifices for me, it was 16 years of night school, very late in life, raising a family and managing a career. But one of the great things about objectives or goals that we have in life is we know what it is we have to accomplish, and more importantly, what we want to accomplish. And when you know what you want to accomplish, that takes the priority, and I think we're more willing to understand we may have to rearrange things, put something we like very much at a low priority professionally or in life. But to my colleague's point, it's all about the balance, and each one of us in the room requires a different sense of balance in our lives.
Great question.
All right, so when I'm interviewing people as well, in my position, I always ask them, what's your vision for the next 2 and 5 years? With what Ms. Keeper said, I was wondering what each of you guys look for in an answer to that question.
I'll take that. I want to hear your clarity. What's your intention? What's your vision really? Are you giving me lip service, or is this really in your passionate heart? Does this align with your affinity of who you are and your personality? Because I'll know. I'll know in your answer. Are you ambitious? Are you confident? I'll know in your answer. Are you bringing me a value add? In lining up your affinity of your personality with your intention, you're going to be super successful, because it's going to be a natural progression for you. But are you clear on that? So it's very important to really understand not only where you're going in your career, but what do you want? Because if you can align those two and really leverage that with who you are, you'll get there.
Yeah, and that vision, it sounds like a simple thing. Mostly people like brevity. Nobody wants to hear you drone on. You should be able to describe your vision very succinctly. But that can take a long time to do. The old joke is I didn't have time for brevity. Like with my company, I spent about 6 months really coming up with what my plan was, which ultimately I can describe in 2 or 3 sentences. But I felt that it had to meet 3 criteria. First, it had to be something you could truly execute in the market. It'd be great to say that you want to be Superman, but you can't do that. The second thing is it'd have to be something, in my case, because it's an investment business, it'd have to be something that could attract capital. Whether it was my own money or others, I shouldn't put my own money into something that somebody else wouldn't have put into. But so that was a criteria to be basically judged. You know, can you be judged and be successful? And then the third criteria was, would I be good at it? And with my background, where I'd worked in office, industrial, multifamily, retail, even some hotel, there's 8 really good MSAs in the Western U.S. and 3 different strategies from development to value add or buying core. That's like 33 different things I could do. But the question is, all right, what are you gonna do? And the answer is, what you're gonna do should be something that you know you'd be good at.
I think I agree. I agree with what's been said here. It's a very wide open, it's an open-ended question. What's your vision? I'm always fascinated to hear the answer to that question. As my colleague said, it tells me a lot about the applicant on the other side of the table. But what I really listen for is how that vision of their career pathing ties into my organization and what they can bring to the table and how they can help the organization grow. Because I've always taken the position that I hire for a career, not a job. And when you hire for a career, you have a different set of lenses that you use to review the applicants. You listen a little differently. The vision is very important. Now, look, somebody just out of high school, college or high school, even if they come in for part-time jobs, I expect them to have an emerging vision. And that vision, I realize, is going to change throughout each one of the decades of their life, because that's how we are as people and professionals. And we change, the workplace changes. So as a finer point, it does depend on who's sitting in front of me and at what point they are in their career. But for this audience, you should have a very good foundational answer to that question.
Thank you. Go ahead, Carrie.
All right, and then a second one, I was wondering, you 3 are obviously very successful. I was wondering if you guys would each define success.
I'll let you start.
Ooh, volunteered me, I wasn't ready. Oh gosh, that's such a tough question. Success to me was very personal. The first thing I had to do was graduate from college. No one in my family had ever graduated from college. I didn't graduate until 1997 here, the bachelor's, and then an MBA in 2006. That was, success is the diamond in your life. Let me just use that analogy. There are very different facets, and some of those facets shine brighter than others. The whole fire brilliance analogy of diamonds. For me, completing college was absolutely everything, success. The other component of that diamond, if you will, was becoming a vice president. I had worked a year and a half, almost 2 years, in a vice president's capacity with no title change, no salary increase. And the reason is we had a new company acquire us, and they were evaluating, and they took their time evaluating. And I had a lot of friends say, and professionals, you're crazy, leave. And I said, you know what, I'm going to stay. I made a commitment to see the transition through. So getting that title was very important. And then there's the family life side of it. Putting my kids through college was very important to me. So those are 3 success factors of that diamond, if you will, that we all call our life and our career.
I've found, guys, that success comes in different levels and different plateaus. At this point in your career, where you're just starting, your success will be hitting the ground running and making those inroads toward your direction. As you continue to progress, and you're looking at these material benchmarks as success, you'll achieve those. But then you'll quickly realize, the journey is my success as you get to those benchmarks of material. Once you go beyond that, you'll start to see, my blended life and my balance is my success. And even beyond that, you'll start to realize, when I lend myself to who I am as a person and my personality and line that up with my work, I'm not working anymore. I'm doing what I love and I'm great at it. And people reward me for it, because now I've come into being more self-actualized. I know exactly who I am, exactly where I'm going, and it's all lined up for me. And I've got this track record of success behind me. Success also, toward the end of this, now if I could look back over my shoulder, is being able to embrace the times when you had failures. You'll have them. But having those failures and embracing them, because now when you come before them again, you'll know how to do it better. So embrace the success of your journey, because that reminds you who you are. And then also embrace those failures, because that reminds you how to do it better. And keep striving. Don't give up, and just keep your mind's eye on the prize, and you'll get there. That's success.
Yeah, one thing about success, or winning, requires risk. If you don't take risk, then you'll never know that the positive outcome happened as opposed to the negative outcome. And one of the things that you guys are about to all get hired, it was already mentioned that you guys are just completely lucky that the unemployment rate is as low as it is, and it's even lower for college-educated folks. So you're going to be selecting the jobs that you take rather than just hoping to get one. But my advice would be to live below your means. Tragically, there's a lot of student debt these days. That's the reality. Pay those off. Save up some cash. Put your money in 401ks, all that kind of stuff. And if you do that, then that would give you the flexibility and perhaps the courage to really take a risk when something comes up that might be worth doing. And it's through that risk-taking process that you'll find that you have the experience and the fulfillment that will be what you'll define as success.
Did you have a question? Yeah. Okay.
This is, a little off track from success, but is there maybe some key mentors that you've had throughout your experience that you've kind of relied on in tough times, or even just kind of ran things by on a regular basis that were kind of key to your, success?
So I'll tell you, there's two forms of mentors. There's the wise person that gives you guidance that you go like, man, he or she's really got that figured out, and that's what I ought to strive to be like. And then there's the negative mentor that you go like, dang, that's a goof. If I ever saw one, I am not going to do that. And both of those mentors are excellent. When you guys look at potential companies that you'd work for, I would first say, make sure it's a company that has a good purpose other than just making money. In pharmaceutical industry companies, a lot of them they're life-saving. There's companies like Tesla that is going to make the planet greener, and just those are good companies. So if you can surround yourself with that, and then the people in the companies and the culture, we heard that term before. If it's a culture that rewards teamwork and recognition and fair play, then that's a great environment. If you find you're not in those two places, then find yourself a new place. But the mentorship is huge, and there's a handful of people that I really count as formative in my life.
I agree totally and wholeheartedly. Along the path of your journeys, one of my greatest mentors was my father. Very well read. I went to the wrong school. I went to your school, that SC place. That's okay. He's still a great gentleman. But one of his things he always taught us as growing up is there's no discriminating excellence. And it's a simple statement, but it's so true. If you're good at what you do, and you do it well, there's no discriminating that. So there's people along your path, and you have to be clear to recognize who in your life is a real mentor. Is it your pastor? Is it your parents? Is it someone is it a neighbor? Really get to know them. Really understand how they operate, and start to really align yourself with them so you can learn. And then in the workplace, there'll be some bosses that may not be the best. Maybe their management style is not one that fits to your personality. So you'll think, when I'm the boss one day, maybe I'll do this a little differently. Or there might be a colleague that's just on fire, top producer. Emulate that person. Get to know that person, study that person. I tell my sons, they're football players, I said, when you're not playing, make sure you're studying the field to emulate the players that are doing what you'd like to do, so you can learn, because it's all a natural progression of learning and embracing and understanding how you work with others.
And I think it's important to be choosy about your mentor. You really do have a say. And don't wait for someone to become your mentor. You can approach them at work, a person of in management, a senior executive. And a lot of companies do have mentorship programs. For me, I was extremely choosy. I had a lot of executives, hey, you're up and coming, and hey, I'll take you under my wing. And to Jim's point, I was like, oh, I don't want to be like this guy at all. But hey, I like this guy over here, or wow, she is really a top-notch executive. I want to be like that. I want to have that person as a mentor. I think that's really important. And then I'm just going to kind of stretch the definition of mentor. Later in my career, I had what I call my board of directors. And you have to think of it as a set of concentric circles. In the center was me, my mentor, and then those people who knew me really well. And then the further you got out in the concentric circles, they knew me, but they didn't know me as well. My intent was to get enough people in that network and mentors to help me when I had problems. And the point of doing that was I could get more of a 360 view because I had those people in the inner circle, and then I had those people who were more outliers, still knew me, but knew me differently. But the mentors, there was a mentor for me in every one of those circles. So they're absolutely very important.
Good question, thank you.
Hi. How do we, as students from a small private school, compete with schools like USC and UCLA that are very well known, much larger?
Well, I'm going to resist the chance to dig at UCLA.
Maybe I should have been sitting in the middle.
I think that the university tie-ins are powerful. They do talk about the Trojan family. Everybody's heard that term, and over the years, I've hired a large number of people. Although oddly, I've hired from Cal and Air Force Academy and Stanford, and it was only years later that I found somebody from USC. So it's a great connector for kind of first jobs. But I don't think that it definitely defines the career. I mean, we're not sprinters here in our career. We're marathon runners, and so it's a starting point advantage to be from one of the connected, bigger connected universities. But I don't think it'll in the long run have major holdbacks for somebody that is working hard and is just doing more.
Your brand is you. So this is your first job to really sell your brand. So how are people receiving your brand in your resume? How is your brand packaged when you come to a resume? Your byline to your brand is your university that you attended, but what are your accomplishments while at that university? So what's your story? Because this is your brand that you are now marketing to an employer. So make sure that when you're doing that your brand story is one that's compelling. It sets you apart from everyone else in this room, because everyone else in this room has also the same university graduate degree. They also are competing for jobs that you will all want probably in unison. But make sure that you set yourself apart with your branding, because this is your first job, this is your first attempt at establishing your brand, you.
And this is a really good brand, and I'll tell you that I have hired people from top universities in our country who were terrible with dealing with people. And it's very interesting. I got to the point where, okay, the education's important, I get it. But when you get into the workplace, what can you do? Do you have critical thinking skills? Can you take data, analyze it? Can you Can you come up with an opinion about that data and share it with me? So I've hired people, like everyone here at the table, from schools all across the country. So the point about the brand is really important. You know, we talked about that at work. When you walk into a room, or here, when you walked into the room today, what did your fellow students say about you? That is in part what your brand is, and you bring that into the workplace. So when you think about competing with other schools, I absolutely get it. I'm not going to say it's not out there, but at the end of the day, you're really looking for the best candidate for the job. And I can be from Stanford or Harvard, but if I don't have the qualifications, the credentials, all of that, I may not be the right person for that job.
I'm going to do an add-on question to that. Primo, maybe you can start us off. So how much time would you spend looking at a resume, and what might be some of the indicators that you would look at specifically in terms of telling that brand story?
Okay, what was the last part of the question? I'm sorry.
So the first one is how much time do you spend
Right.
typically looking at the resume, and the second is what would then be some of the indicators on that resume for that brand, like you were just talking about?
Okay, I looked at resume, director level and above is where I got involved. And like every other organization in the country, we have those applicant tracking systems that have the logarithms that pick up on keywords and all of that. And that's important, and I get it, but I would insist on seeing the resumes. I wanted to touch the resumes, I wanted to look at them, and we had a very talented college recruiting staff. So when I looked at the resume, the first thing I looked at is how it's presented, because that is a reflection, I think, of the brand of the individual. College students, I know there's going to be an emphasis on courses taken, and they're going to de-emphasize employment. If you have experience, the opposite is true. Believe it or don't, I look, when I'm reading, if I see a spelling error or a grammatical error, I'm like, okay, attention to detail. I will really think about that. And then, depending on the job, I look at the experience and how relevant that is to the position that we're hiring for. And then finally, branding. I'm looking at extracurricular activities, and I'm looking at activities in the community, which tells me a lot about that person. I'm a pretty good read of people. And generally, those applications, when I brought them in, the candidate in, they would have a very unique sense of, they would have a unique brand and a sense of that brand when they came in. And back to the earlier point, they really knew who they were. They had a sense of identity coming in.
So with resumes, I get several, hundreds, with different firms. I've started a full-service real estate firm, so I've looked at top-producing real estate agents over the years. I've looked at business development consultants. I've done quite a bit with the resumes. It takes me only 5 minutes to look at a resume to see whether or not it's going to be a value add for my firm. What I'm looking for in the resume is the story. Is there progression of success? Is the theme song accomplishment? You guys don't have a lot of career credentials just yet, but what's been your story? What's making you appear as though you're a runner towards success? Make sure to highlight that on your resume. You know, I've done this at school, I've done this on my off hours, I've done this with my family. Those are all accolades that tell a story about your brand, you. Make sure that that's highlighted, because the recipient, the reader, does pick up on that. And it's a theme song. If it's Helter Skelter, I'm done. If it's one highlight and the rest are not so great, I'm done. A track record of success will lend itself to more successes. And I don't need you to be the CEO of a company to show me your success. I just need to see that there's a natural progression in what you are doing, because it is true and real. It's authentic. The other thing I look at is people skills. In sales and in business development in some of the real estate industries, I need someone that's people-oriented, and people are either usually typically drawn to you, or there's a little bit of a acquiesce. So it's very important for me in what I do that people have a sense of knowing themselves and having a real good affinity toward people. There's an it factor with some resumes where someone I know is just going to be an incredible value add to what I'm doing because they're able to think outside the box. I don't need cookie cutter traditionally. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. I need someone that can really think on their own 2 feet and bring something new to the table. And really, at the end of the day, every employer wants to see how are they going to help further my business? How are they going to bring me new business? How are they going to reinvent some of the things that we're currently doing to implement new strategies or new ideas? Are they a thinker? Will they ultimately be a leader? Are they ambitious? Are they inquisitive? Are they really intrigued about what we're doing? Because clearly if they are, I know that they're really wanting to get involved, and this is someone that's going to be a candidate for me. So keep those things in mind when you're writing and presenting your brand in a resume.
I'm probably not a very good resume reader, to be fair. But what I do take a lot of strength from is everybody knows somebody. And you know, we were sitting here for probably like 2-3 minutes, and we immediately came into people that we knew in common. And so you're experienced already. And you've formed you know, connections with people that you know that might know somebody else, and having the interpersonal skills and the reference tells you about the place that you could be interviewing, and then it tells them a lot about you. So so definitely put together a good resume. Don't have typos. Don't have it poorly organized. Don't have too much information on it. Highlight the strengths and have it organized, and you know, distinguish yourself. Like I was the captain of my, you know, lacrosse team, or I was the president of the Sierra Club, or you know, whatever the things are. Showing leadership is always helpful. But the resume, I think, is almost it's more of an eliminator than a opportunity creator. But your personal relationships, you know, parents, friends at a company, you know, any internships that you've done, any connections that you have, those would be stronger than the written document, because it really is hard to read resumes, and I'm just not good at it. I'm sure others are, but I'm not.
Right. Well, no, I absolutely agree with that. You have to think of it this way. If you had to hire someone and all you knew about them was the piece of paper in front of you, and you have to determine whether or not you want to bring this person in, what would you want to see on that resume? What would you want to know? And I'll just turn the tables here. What is it that you want your audience to know? You know, in the class I teach, it's called the U factor out there. What is it that you, my audience, need to know about me, and what's going to set me apart? And to Jim's point, this whole issue of, you have a network in this room right now, and some of you are going to be in charge of companies. And the relationship you have here is very, very important. And how you build on that. And your internships is equally as important. And those things are reflective on the resume. So I think I'm kind of going off left field here, but the networking, the relationships, to the point made earlier, who you know, and then the resume and what's on that resume and your brand are really the key factors to moving you from academia into the business world.
Do we have some more questions? We have a question in the back. Sean. Oh, I'm sorry. And then we'll come back to you.
Thank you. We all make assumptions, I'm assuming. What would be the worst assumption to bring into an interview?
Go ahead, Jim.
I was just going to say, it's slightly different than your answer, and I like to be direct, but where I've made mistakes, it's seldom been mistakes of direct action. It's been mistakes of inaction. And an example was when we lived in Pasadena, we figured out that the little house we bought when my wife and I didn't have any kids became a really little house once we had a kid. And we could have gone and bought another house, but I figured out this inefficiency in the market. that homes were selling for, at that time, like, $220 a square foot, and it cost about $120 a square foot to build additional space. So you could build additional space and effectively make like $100 a square foot. And I thought, well, that's cool. So we more or less tore down and rebuilt our house, and it was a moneymaker. My goof was I didn't realize if that worked on one house, why wouldn't that work on every house in the neighborhood? And so like repeatedly over my time, the mistakes are when you just don't see the opportunities that are in front of you. And so the thing about assuming to me is it's that you stopped asking. And so I would just encourage to keep asking, because it's that next question that might be the one that causes the light to turn on, and occasionally my light didn't turn on.
I'll share with that. One of my worst interview experiences for myself personally over the years is not showing up. I sat there, and I even laugh at this present moment, because I sat there and I was almost interviewing the interviewee. I'm waiting for them to sell me. You have to come prepared. If it's something, you only get one shot to make a good first impression. I know that's cliche, but it's so true. So make sure when you're going before an interviewer that you show up. You've done your homework on the firm. You've done your homework on who you're sitting with. So you know about the things that they've done in their lifetime, so you can ask pointed questions. You know about the firm's bottom line as far as their capital expenditures, or where they're going as far as their growth trends. So you can bring added value in some of your life experience over the years, or what you're currently doing as far as what your education presents. Do your homework. Show up for the interview. Because those are the assumptions. Sometimes you go to the interview thinking, okay, now I've got to just go through this drill. No, you have to come with it and really be prepared. So that assumption should be clear in your mind as you sit there.
I think the assumption that I'm not going to get this job, if you come into an interview, and I've seen many candidates do that at all level, it really reflects on how you talk about yourself, conduct yourself in that interview. The worst assumption, I had a candidate come in, and unbeknownst to me, he was the cat's meow for this job. He said, I got a killer resume here, I'm your guy. I mean, I totally understood what he was saying to me, but he really wasn't our candidate. And when he left, I thought, wow, he came in here with a whole lot of assumptions, like he was getting hired today, really great resume, and I really wanted to pull him aside and say, that didn't work. And you need to sit down and rethink this thing through. So Jim's point about assumptions, if we have assumptions, then we miss things that are very, very important.
We have a question to Susan. Right there.
Thank you. Is there, or was there a point in your career where you felt validated and like you were actually on the right path, and that you were actually working in like your calling?
I can tell you the thing which is most humbling to me, and I almost can't say this without kind of being emotional about it, is that when I formed my own firm, I had a partner that I've known my whole life, because it was my mom. We were 50-50 equity investors in our first deal in 2007. And then that deal had really matured. It was a bonds-anchored grocery shopping center that we really fixed up and turned around, and it was a good moneymaker. And so I was going to be diversifying by selling that and then buying different properties. What touched me was how many people said, Jim, if you're investing, we're going to invest with you too on your next deals. And they were coming in asking to invest. I didn't have to raise money, and it's been, we've never marketed, and we have a whole list of other people, and I think that one, they're all just super good people, so I'm lucky to know them all. But you probably will find that you have resources that you didn't even know you had, because you never put yourself in the position to benefit from it. And for me, it's been incredible, because these are very good friends, many of which I've known 20 and 30 years. Really smart people, heads of major companies, KPMG, Manat's a big law firm in West LA, Cushman & Wakefield, Jones Lang LaSalle is one of the largest real estate companies in the world. These are senior people, these firms, and they came to me. And it's just, it's touching to have that kind of trust. But I never would have known it if I hadn't formed my own firm. So again, that's kind of the assumed question. It's like, I didn't ask the question whether people would want to be with me, but you find out that they are, and that's affirming.
It is affirming, and I agree with Jim wholeheartedly. There's several levels of validation for my career personally. You know, getting the accolades, being named most notable woman in America, one of the most notable 2,000 women in America, getting business awards, 2006 Businesswoman of the Year by Washington, D.C. Those are validations, but there's also other validations. When you get to a certain level of success, you realize when you're able to give back, and really, like today, this is very validating, because you want to instill in others some of the things that you've come to learn over the course of your journey. So that also is very validating, because now you can see it in its intrinsic self and giving back and helping others to grow. So you're handing off the baton, which is very validating, because you're feeling as though you're at a certain level of degree, and you've formed some level of business acumen that you want to teach and you want to share with others. So you'll get there, but just remember along the way to look for those validators for yourself, and remind yourself of, you know, I'm pretty decent because I'm being validated each step of the way. I just got a promotion. My boss just recognized what I did. I just got hired at this firm that I really love. Reward yourself each step of the way so you can continue to push to keep going.
I love that. Take the time out for yourselves. It's okay to say, wow, I reached this milestone, and to be very proud about that. I think for me, it was the second or third acquisition in when the head of HR for the acquiring company, who I won't name, came into my office and said, you've been through 3 of these, so we're going to put you on this committee. You seem to have a knack for getting teams through mergers and acquisitions and companies. And I wanted to be a psychologist way back when. I wanted to help people out. And that all transitioned into human resources, helping people in a different way on a different level. But I suddenly realized that I was very good with people in transitional settings. So every single merger and acquisition after that time, and GE was by far the toughest one, I got that call right away. And there was a sense of validation there that I've been through 5 or 6 of these. And I like helping people and getting through this. So that was a moment of success for me in my career. I had never planned on doing that, believe me, to help companies get through mergers and acquisitions. But, you know, that's the way it worked out. And after each one, I would sit down and say to myself, you know, wow, this is tremendous. And then you do the usual evaluation, what can I do differently, you know, next time. So you have to take the time to recognize the milestones in your life, you know, in your career. You don't know where you're going if you don't understand where you've been. And part of understanding where you've been is recognizing those milestones professionally.
Daniel, do you want to close us out with the last question?
So in terms of becoming a successful professional, what are some core virtues and core values you believe are essential to have?
Ethics is utmost importance. If you lead your business with ethics and your morals, it gives you longevity. I've seen in real estate, commercial real estate, which is primarily my background, you come to see a lot of high finance transactions. Much like Jim, we're in arenas where there's, you know, the material side of it is endless. So you come across a lot of different types of personalities, but if I could look back over my shoulder, and myself included, the people that, and I'm sure Jim is part of that team, the people that have made it and have been most successful are the people that really lead their business with ethics and morals. It's very, very important, because that gives you the longevity.
Yeah, and consistency and integrity are they're fundamental. And follow through on anything, you know, be reluctant to make a promise, but then keep it. And then I mentioned it before about the types of companies that you want to work with, or ones that there's some purpose other than simply making money. And in the long run, there's been all kinds of studies. Those are the companies that end up making more money, and there's better rewards. But do that. For us in our property investments, you know, we'll have anywhere from 68%, 60 to 80% of the income comes from national credit tenants. The property we're working on right now, it's Walmart, Lowe's, Bank of America, Chipotle, Starbucks, PetSmart, you know, Dollar Tree. You know, it's a lineup of tenants, and they mostly pay the rent. They mostly pay the mortgage back. So they're the guys who give a return. But in every shopping center, there's the little local guy. So if you had a Bank of America and a CVS pharmacy, and if that was in Iowa or Florida or California, it's the same thing. It's an institutional property. But if there's a shopkeeper there that is ingratiated with the local community, they make it unique. So I don't even care if we make money on those tenants. I don't want to tell them that. But the truth is, we'll go out of my way for them, because those are the people I want to build up. And so do something better is my advice, but always make sure that your integrity is rock solid.
You have to act with the highest degree of integrity and ethics in everything that you do, in your personal life and in the workplace. Because you're going to find yourselves in some situations, you're going to hear information at work or see something happen where you're going to be called upon to make an ethical decision. Oh, do I share what I just heard in the break room? Oh, wow, so-and-so isn't being paid their overtime correctly. You have a decision of ethics there, whether you come forward or not with the information. So I just can't say that enough. Everything that you do has to be done and say with the highest degree of integrity and ethics. It's just that simple.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great questions, and that actually is a great way to close. I've been doing this, asked to conduct this event the last 2 years, and Dr. Maxey and I were just chatting before the session on how long he's actually the one that started the Path to Professionalism. We think it's been probably about a decade that we've been conducting this event. But when I've been looking for speakers, the 3 things that I look at in terms of who I want to invite to campus to share is strength of character, model of integrity, and a strong sense of purpose. And I'm happy to say that, you know, all 3 of our panelists are models for all 3 of those things and more. Success and networking, right? I met Jim. Our sons played baseball at 12 years old. We were traveling on a team to Cooperstown, had never met, kids had never played before, and over the years, I've learned about these qualities about him. And Cynthia, I found out I met actually through Melinda Roper here on campus, but we lived in the same community and had boys that played in the same sports, and I had the pleasure of meeting her. And with Primo, he's been here on campus for several years, has always given back, and it's been an honor to have him participate today in this event for me. So much appreciation to the 3 of you.
Well, thank
We
you.
value
Thank
your
you.
input, and I encourage you all to come up, introduce yourself. If you had a question that you quickly wanted to ask them that you maybe were a little too nervous to ask in front of everybody, please do so. And the final thing, I need to make the announcement. If you are graduating this year, we'd love to see you at the banquet on May 11th. So please RSVP. If you have questions, Susan and Kim can provide some guidance, but we'd love to see you there and recognize your accomplishments. Thank you very much for your time this morning.